6 o'clock on this Thursday morning. Thanks so much for joining us here on Up with KREM. I'm Channing Curtis.
And I'm Tim Pham. A lot to get to on this Thursday morning, but first we're starting things off with a look at your weather forecast because meteorologist Thomas Patrick is tracking some active weather in North Idaho. And Thomas, some people might be wondering about the air quality because it wasn't great yesterday.
Yeah, it's still kind of hovering around that moderate stage at the moment. And to those that might be the most sensitive to the air quality, you're probably noticing a small difference, but it could get worse throughout the day today, and all that is because of the Canadian wildfires. But I am tracking the thunderstorm activity over North Idaho this morning. What a lightning show for those in Bonners Ferry to Sandpoint to even Coeur d'Alene at the 5 o'clock hour. But in the past 15 minutes, we have not seen any lightning strikes in the region, just showing just how quickly the energy faded and fizzled away out of those thunderstorms. And again, as we zoom in over Coeur d'Alene, those of you that might be living on the very eastern edge of Coeur d'Alene probably got some heavier rain, but at the moment, it's all faded away and fizzled out. Now, the storm was flood advised, and it still is until 8 o'clock this morning, so just be cautious for any flooded roadways in that region. But most of this is to the east of the Coeur d'Alene city limits.
In a matter of days, the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students will be arraigned in Latah County Court.
Now, this comes after a secret grand jury indicted Brian Kohberger on all charges. We first broke this development in the case right here on Up with KREM yesterday. Now, last November, Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xander Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were all stabbed to death in an off-campus home. The suspect was a PhD candidate at the Washington State University. Police arrested him 47 days later in Pennsylvania. Investigators were able to connect him to the case through DNA evidence that was found on a knife sheath that was left at the crime scene. He now faces 4 first-degree murder charges and 1 count of burglary. Now, next month was supposed to be the suspect's preliminary hearing.
Yeah, but the grand jury indictment means he will be arraigned this upcoming Monday, where he will likely enter a plea. Nicole Hernandez first broke this story for us here on Up with KREM. She's in the newsroom right now. So, Nicole, why did prosecutors ask this grand jury for this decision over a preliminary hearing?
So Tim, Channing, we talked to a trial attorney from Seattle who says the prosecutors asking for a grand jury was basically a strategic move. Mo Hamoudi says since the grand jury process happens privately, it can protect the defendant, the witnesses, and even some of the evidence. The prosecutors don't have to lay out all of their evidence to a grand jury, just enough to prove there's enough evidence for a trial, so they can save some of their actual case theory for the trial. A grand jury also does not allow any cross-examination, so a lot of these are positives for the prosecution, but it can really hurt the defense.
The only authority that the defense attorney has is nothing. Can't do anything.
A grand jury is very different from a trial jury. There's more people, and the decision does not have anything to do with guilt. The goal was for the group to decide if there's enough evidence to charge Kohberger and have a trial, which of course they ultimately did. The vote happened in secret, and the decision did not have to be unanimous. They just needed at least 12 yes votes to make an indictment. Ultimately, Hamoudi says getting this indictment could show just how strong of a case the prosecutors have.
Because what the prosecutor received was a positive nod by members of the public with respect to some of the evidence that they've collected thus far.
So next Monday's is the preliminary hearing, and there will be a new judge, different than the judge who presided over Kohberger's first appearance. And another question, could Kohberger face the death penalty? Well, Idaho Code says after Kohberger pleads guilty or not guilty again on Monday, which will likely happen at that arraignment, the prosecutors have 60 days to request the death penalty. In the newsroom, Nicole Hernandez, KREM 2 News.
Now the question is, what does this indictment mean for the gag order?
Latah County Judge Megan Marshall put that order in place to prevent law enforcement, attorneys, and the victims' families from publicly speaking about the case.
So we spoke with the attorney representing the Gonsalves family. Shannon Gray tells us that he is still in the dark now that a new judge will take over this case.
The conundrum is that he's being arraigned at 9 o'clock on Monday, and then we have a scheduling conference on the non-dissemination gag order at 10 o'clock. But the issue with that is that as soon as he's arraigned, Judge Marshall is off the case, and it goes to Judge. Why are we having a scheduling conference with Judge Marshall?
Gray has filed a motion to remove the gag order. In court documents, he claims he and the Gonsalves family should be allowed to speak publicly about the case under the First Amendment. We do know Judge John Judge will take over the case. We will hear more from Gray about the indictment in our next half hour of Up with KREM coming up at 6:30.
Well, now in the meantime, you can watch all of our coverage on this case on our streaming platform, KREM 2+. It's free to download on Roku or Amazon Fire. Now, for the latest information, you can also just text us the word Moscow to 509-448-2000, and we will send you a link to all of our reporting right to your phone.
The time now is 6:05. It's time for your morning rush. More news in less time. A large fire near Post Falls is under investigation this morning. Fire crews responded to Hutter Road and Celtice Way last night. You can see pretty big plumes of smoke filling the air. Our team is making phone calls to the Post Falls Fire Department to find out how this fire started or if anyone was injured. A 4-year-old girl is in critical condition this morning after a car crash at SeaTac International Airport. We are told a car jumped the curb and hit the child and 2 other people in the departures area. A SeaTac spokesperson says the driver accidentally hit the gas pedal and drove into the Alaska Airlines check-in. 2 other victims were sent to a hospital. New in the last 24 hours, we've learned the Gonzaga women's basketball team is headed overseas. In August, they will play 3 games against international teams. So we know they are playing in Athens, Montenegro, and Croatia. The trip is from August 13th to the 25th. That is a look at your morning rush.
And our other big weather headline for today is these air quality alerts that have been issued for eastern Washington. We saw the hazy skies yesterday. All this is due to the Canadian wildfires that have been pluming out a ton of smoke. Now, most of it is moving into Montana and in other areas eastward. But as of yesterday, we started to see just drop in sky conditions, and now that could result in a drop in air quality later today. So that's something we will keep a very sharp eye on. Temperature-wise, we are still in the 60s, and in Spokane, we actually rose another 2 degrees from 61 to now 63, marking the warm spot in the inland northwest right now. Should be in the mid 80s for today. Not quite record highs for this afternoon, but we are still on track to break records for Friday and Saturday as the summer heat continues into the weekend.